Hey, what's up, everyone? You are listening or watching my comic book podcast journey, and I'm getting everything all mixed up. My comic book journey podcast. I'm your host, KNDY, and for this very issue, where we're looking at right here, Cerebus issue 0. This one was released back in June 1993. Company's Aardvark-Vanaheim. The president and writer is David Sim. Vice president and backgrounds, cover color, and tones by Gerhard. And typesetting by Linda Berzins. Okay. So, I'm going to be talking about this very issue. This issue doesn't take the usual banal route of trying to create an origin story of Cerebus the Aardvark, but it tackles a few things that readers of the trade paperbacks may be interested in knowing. When the issue came out in 1993, by then Dave Sim, it was little over the halfway point of his Cerebus storyline. Sim has stated that when he began the series in December 1977, the goal was to conclude in March 2004 at issue 300 with the death of the title character. When it comes to the most fascinating aspect on the mindset of David Sim, is featured in the inside cover with the notes from the president, in which he discusses the relationship of the Cerebus characters to himself and how the series documents the ups and downs of the character. I was fascinated that Sim used a comparison to Marvel Comics' Howard the Duck, but where both characters can get moody and cranky at times, one would find Cerebus to be more mentally stimulating, written out of creativity, intelligence, and sometimes being audacious and surprising. You will no doubt witness the change of the comic book series as we all change throughout our lives. Could you imagine writing about a character based on your perspective on life as a teenager, and then to your young adult years, to your middle adult years, and then as you and your tastes change, especially in pop culture, or you find yourself being much more mature later in your older years? And while the change of style has always been a subject of debate among the hardcore fans, we've seen it before in other mediums. For example, Jean-Luc Godard. Try watching his 50s films and how things drastically change. In the 60s, people change. People get tired. People try to do things that are different or reflect their state of mind. And then, of course, you could check out, Jean-Luc Godard's later work. Totally different from the stuff he used to do. But that's all about change and people growing from that change. Cerebus, to me, is a series many of us grew up with. This is really interesting because my comic book shop, well, actually a magazine shop, not a comic book shop, was big on Cerebus, and they kept on getting it in. And I think this was what was interesting about this magazine shop. It would focus mostly on independent titles, not the major titles. Granted, she knew that the major titles made money, but she would have like titles like from Eclipse series, Dark Horse, and also like Aardvark-Vanaheim, stuff you never usually see in the front of a comic book store. Usually it's diehard fans who grew up with it or read it, people looking for an alternate storyline that they could get into that's not Marvel or DC or some major comic book company. But yeah, that's one thing that one thing I noticed with Cerebus is just you witness the change throughout the decades of this character. As mentioned earlier, this is not an issue number 0 going the banal route of showcasing an origin. It features 3 stories that could have been easily integrated into the end or beginning of an arc. There are 3 stories featured that are more or less samplings to help introduce people to Cerebus. Personally, do yourself a favor and purchase the inexpensive trade paperbacks and read each volume in order. Much better that way. But for the first story, Exodus, featured in Cerebus issue number 51, written back in June 1983, it was a story that was featured between the last issue of High Society and the first issue of Church and State, and is a fun storyline featuring Cerebus, Lord Julius, Duke Leonardi, and Elrod locked inside a closet together. The second story is Square One from Cerebus issues 112 to 113 from July to August 1988. And what happens when Cerebus returns to a small hotel he had commandeered back in the Church and State arc. A story primarily told through artwork with only its final pages having dialogue. And third story is Like a Looks from Cerebus issues 137 and 138 from September 1990. A hilarious story about the plethora of Lord Julius lookalikes, or in this case, like-a-looks, and each of them not knowing who the real Lord Julius is. For the most part, you get, two comedy stories and one that is more on the serious side. This is a good sample of what one can expect from a Cerebus comic book. But while a solid sampler, to be truthful, Cerebus is a series that really needs to be read in its original arcs. Skipping around and reading a story with no real context to the characters and their surroundings is tough for those who are not familiar with Cerebus, and jumping aboard is fine, but you will want to read the first 4 to 5 books of Cerebus to have a better understanding. But reading the books, I'm specifically writing about the omnibus collections, are the best way to go. So definitely check those out. They're not that expensive. You can definitely find those affordably. Otherwise, Cerebus issue 0 can be seen as a sampler, and if you like what you read, then definitely check out the collected volumes. By the way, don't you find it interesting if you look at the cover right there? The guy with a skateboard. Gosh, Cerebus, were you like way cool back in the olden days? Cerebus answers, why don't you buy a copy and find out yourself, butthead? And what's interesting is you can see him holding a Spawn cover and a Wizard magazine. And I talked about the 90s before, of how the 90s, especially Wizard, was very good at pushing independents like Image Comics, but rarely did they push stuff like Cerebus. And it's just funny how you see the Spawn right there. But yeah, definitely the Spawn logo you can see right there on the skateboard. But yeah, definitely an interesting, fascinating issue, a good issue. But again, only if you want to get a sampler of what Cerebus is. But the trade paperbacks are definitely a way to go. They're very thick too, very good. Well done. Just definitely do yourself a favor and find those. Okay, everyone, that's pretty much it for Cerebus number 0. You all take care. Wink, wink, and see you later, everyone. Bye-bye.